Speaking Human.
Today on Speaking Human, we hop in the Wrangler and head off-road to shine a spotlight on Jeep as the brand celebrates its 75th anniversary. Pop off the top and rip off the doors because this podcast is ready to ride.
Speaking Human.
Welcome to Speaking Human, the official podcast of Monsters Unlimited, a creative agency with a business brain. I'm Shad Conley, Communications Director at Monsters Unlimited, and when I want to outrun a T-Rex with Jeff Goldblum, I drive a Jeep.
And I'm Patrick Jebber, Creative Director at Monsters Unlimited, and resident Jeeper who forgets and waves at Wranglers even when I'm not riding in one.
Hashtag my Jeep story.
Hashtag, it's how we do.
If this is your first time checking out the podcast, our goal on Speaking Human is to simplify complex marketing topics. We toss aside all the buzzwords and mumbo jumbo so we can focus on how marketing can bring brands and people together. On today's episode, we're taking a detour from our typical format of exploring specific marketing efforts to focus on a specific brand. It's a brand that's logged some serious mileage over 75 years. A brand that's been everywhere from World War II to Jurassic Park. A brand that's distinctly American but recognized around the world. This podcast can hit some rocky terrain and get caked in mud at any minute. So let's get into it.
I've seen things no man should bear, and those that every man should dare. From the beaches of Normandy to the far reaches of the earth. In my life, I have lived millions of lives. I've outrun robots and danced with dinosaurs. I've faced the faces of fear and fortitude and witnessed great beauty in the making. I've kept the company of kings and queens, but I'm no royalty or saint. I've traveled, trekked, wandered, and roamed, only to find myself right where I belong.
What you just heard was an audio clip from Jeep's Portraits commercial. That ad tells the story of the Jeep brand's rich 75-year history through a series of captivating black and white images. It was actually one of two commercials for Jeep that aired during this year's Super Bowl. We're going to talk about that ad today, along with Jeep branding and marketing in general. But first, Patrick, can you give our listeners a little bit of background on the Jeep brand?
I would be happy to give the intro to this iconic brand, Chad. I'll start by saying that this brand is very near and dear to my heart, as you well know. It's an American brand that dates back to the 1940s, when Jeeps were supplied to the U.S. military with the Willys Quad and a couple other Willys I can mention. The MA and the MB will mean nothing to the average listener. They are the oldest four-wheel drive mass production vehicles, though, now known to most people as SUVs. And the first civilian models of Jeep were produced in 1945. A little bit of backstory. But by the numbers, Shad, this brand is doing actually very well. In 2015, Fiat Chrysler automobiles sold more than 1.2 million Jeeps worldwide, up from 497,000 SUVs in 2008. It was the fourth consecutive year that the brand sold the most vehicles in its history. Finally, I think Jeep says it best when it comes to their brand, and I quote, "For 75 years, the Jeep brand has been indelibly linked to freedom, adventure, authenticity, and passion. The brand's unwavering commitment to strength and meaningful engineering has helped forge an extraordinary, uncommon bond between the vehicles and their owners." So that's a little bit about Jeep.
And I think that last bit's pretty dead on, and a nice bit of writing from the people behind Jeep. It captures a lot of, I think, what we're going to be talking about here as we dig a little bit into the Jeep brand today, which I know is going to be a great time for you because this is something very near and dear to your heart. Which is where we'll start here. So just to give our listeners some background on where we're coming from, because a lot of, marketing and branding, how it hits you is subjective based on your relationship to the world, what's kind of going on in your life, how these things function in the world that you live. So tell me, Patrick, Tell everybody, what's your personal experience with Jeep and what's your perception of the brand?
I feel like you're talking to me like I'm an idiot. We know that you love it. We know that you love it. You're so cute with your little loving.
I like to give, let the listeners know what they're in store for. I want to put that all up front there so they're not like, that dude's totally biased.
That man just keeps spewing his brand loyalty all over the place.
Brand love.
Well, I've personally had 4 Jeeps in my life. My father owned one when I was a kid, might have made me a little biased maybe. All of the Jeeps that I've had have been great vehicles. I've had 2 Wranglers. I now have 1 of those currently. So that's my personal experience. What's yours, Shad?
See, mine's a little outside because I've never owned a Jeep, so I don't have that inside insight. I'm not a Jeep owner or Jeep customer, but my perception of the brand is basically everything you stated in, the paragraph from Jeep. And whether that's a result of it being ingrained through marketing or just through the general nostalgia, how I view it. I knew a lot of guys who owned Jeeps when I was in college. So most of my memories, I can associate with that youth and freedom, taking trips in them and riding with the doors off and stuff like that. And I think when somebody initially says Jeep, you automatically think of the Wrangler with the doors and top off. Definitely a positive.
And it's funny that you have that positive brand perception, even though not being an owner of one.
What do you think, Patrick? What makes this brand stand out? Why do so many people love this brand? How is it unique and different from all the other car brands that are out there?
Well, first, I think it has that long history that we're talking about. And it was developed for the military, so the product had to endure beatings that surpassed what most other car brands experienced. And through that unique life cycle that it's had, I think it became synonymous with quality, strength, endurance, those things that they talk about on the Jeep site. So I think that is in and of itself the biggest thing that makes the brand stand out. And a lot of car brands just don't have that because they don't have that history to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it definitely has that history in place. Obviously, 75 years in the World War II Association. That's a big deal, and that's powerful, and that's useful. One of the other things, though, is people like you, the kind of enthusiastic fan base built around Jeeps, people who don't just like to buy Jeeps, but like to customize Jeeps and talk about Jeeps.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Which makes sense because it's one of the defining cars of history. You think of like your Mustang or Lamborghini or Mini Coopers, cars that are immediately recognizable to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's obviously where the Jeep is.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
Immediate associations. So that ties in a little bit with the Super Bowl ad focused on the 75th anniversary that we played a clip of earlier. And there was that one and there was another one they also did, 4x Forever, I think it was called. So what did you think about those Super Bowl ads for Jeep? Did you think they were effective in the hashtag My Jeep Story campaign that was tied to those?
Yeah, I think they were very effective. What's so great about the Jeep ads is their emphasis on the history of the brand. It's interweaved through the entire thing. Also, the personalization of the brand and the experience that the brand offers. The history, which speaks for itself. In essence, I think it demonstrates that the brand is devoted to quality and craftsmanship, shown through its longevity. The personalization, which speaks to you as a person and how you make Jeep. They even say that we don't make Jeep, you do. Great example, the Jeep Wrangler and the ways in which people can customize it to the nth degree, how the vehicle is a reflection of the owners and their likes and their tastes and their personalities. And then third, the experience, because the Jeep slogan, go anywhere, do anything. It's those experiences you have and the places your vehicle takes you that makes life memorable. Hashtag My Jeep Story. And that's crucial to the campaign, to the brand. So.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head with the word experience there as far as the commercial goes. They really just got that human angle and showing all the places the Jeep has been or like people it's affected in the past 75 years. I thought that Portraits commercial was great. We had our Super Bowl ad show. It wasn't released before the big game, but that would have definitely been one that was on my list of the best ads of the Super Bowl, just because it did such a good job of tapping into the history and the fan base and getting that message across, and it felt meaningful, like it's meaningful to own a Jeep, which is interesting. Another interesting thing about that commercial was that the way it was shot was like basically a mobile ad put on your TV screen. It's, made to fit a phone screen.
Yeah.
But when you watch it on a widescreen TV, obviously most of your screen is black.
Yeah.
which added something to it, though, even when you watched it on the big screen, because it just made it stand out a little more.
It had that Instagram feel with the squared layout. And on the big screen, it took you to that intimate place where you would be with a mobile device.
Yeah, it was kind of a bold move, but it definitely worked there. And the, My Jeep Story campaign, we've kind of seen things like this before, so it's nothing totally groundbreaking, but it's smart when you think about, as we mentioned, a brand like Jeep that has that passionate and vocal fan base. So why not get them to interact? Why not invite them to be a part of the story? Make their voices heard on social media and talk about Jeep. I mean, that's a great thing across the board. And, Jeep people like talking about Jeeps. I'm wondering how much people were using the hashtag on Twitter, and there was a decent amount. Most of them were, overwhelmingly positive and pretty interesting. There were a lot of images of people's Jeeps and stuff, which are cool to look at. But I'll read you a few of just the more text ones. Stephen Dieters posted, "My wife just traded her Jeep Wrangler of 9 years, and I haven't seen her this sad since her last dog died. Hashtag my Jeep story." Adam Wesolowski, "Jeep, perfect all-year vehicle. Naked in the summer and ultra-capable in the winter. It's my daily driver and my toy. Hashtag my Jeep story." And
I like where you use the hashtag at the end.
Yeah, you got to throw it in there, because I want to make this podcast feel like Twitter. So if you've ever wanted to listen to a podcast that was like Twitter in your ears, here we go. Real One with Brains posted, "First Jeep ran until 308,000 miles. That's impressive. Got me through tough times and a tornado. Now my second Jeep is writing its own story. Hashtag my Jeep story." So those are just some examples, and they speak to that strength and quality that you were talking about of the brand. So they are actually getting some mileage out of that hashtag, it seems like.
Yeah. When you've got these brand ambassadors who genuinely love the Jeep brand, why not try to build that community? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Does a good job emphasizing the people who drive Jeeps, and their experiences, like you said. Side benefit is it gives the brand some insight into what their customers are thinking or doing, how they're using the product, which can be useful later on for other things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it could evolve like any other brand marketing initiative. It could be, hashtag my Jeep story. It could be something else later, but at least they're capitalizing on being able to connect with those people.
And if you're listening to what they're saying, you might pull some value from that feedback. Moving on from the Super Bowl ads, let's talk about kind of another aspect of Jeep marketing or branding that you think is interesting, Patrick. Throw something out there that you want to talk about.
So something that actually is very meaningful for the brand, Jeep Life. And this is sort of a branding initiative. If you haven't seen it, you can actually get to it from their website. It's basically a way for owners of a Jeep to connect to all things Jeep. And so Jeep Life is a way that they've organized or categorize different Jeep aspects like news and events and things that are going on. But specifically, the biggest part of that is Jeep events. Jeep events are one of the most iconic and biggest relationship building elements to any vehicle brand that I've ever seen. Jeep Jamborees, which are Jeep hyper-focused events, are notorious places for owners to show off their vehicles, push them to the limits via these like customized obstacle courses, and to bond with other Jeep owners, tell stories like you're talking about in the hashtag my Jeep story. People talk about different Jeep stories, like, I got caught in the mud and I had to be towed out, or I flipped my Jeep over on the rocks in Nevada, or, whatever it may be. It's a very unique way and family-friendly atmosphere that enhances the brand even more. Because there's nothing better than having a bunch of people who are brand ambassadors together talking about the brand, because that in and of itself sells you.
Oh, yeah. Another thing that happens in that process while you're underlining, Jeep Life, is you're saying, hey, we're different. Jeep owners, we're different. We're not like everybody else. Mm-hmm. We're something special. We're something different. We live life differently. We approach things differently. We look at things differently. And it's a great way to put your customer up on a pedestal a little bit.
I would have to say, all great brands, the ones that really thrive and grow, they all have elements of this, word of mouth, really, in essence.
And no better marketing than that. So Let me ask you, have you ever been to a Jeep Jamboree?
I haven't, only just because of timing, but that is one of my goals, is to go. One of my bucket list goals in life.
Sad that you haven't been to one. You're a disgrace.
I know.
They should probably take your Jeep away.
I should be ashamed of myself.
Well, as long as we both agree on that.
Yeah.
The thing I picked out was looking at Jeep on Instagram, the ideal social network for them. That's where I think they do the best work, just because a lot of those things they talk about, that adventure, outdoor, freedom, really fits well to the visual format. Seeing these images of Jeep in these different landscapes or people doing different things with Jeep, like you said, says a lot about the experience and the people that are tied to the brand. Mm-hmm. So I think the Instagram page is a great place to see that. And it's done really successfully. They post regularly. They use a ton of hashtags. They have these eye-catching images and get a lot of comments. I mean, like hundreds of comments every time they post something. They have a really good social community going on there.
Yeah, Instagram is a great channel for experiencing things. When you see all of these experiences, it is a story about what you can do with this product, with a Jeep, which sells itself. Who doesn't want to be able to go anywhere, do anything, right? Everybody wants that freedom.
Yeah, who doesn't want to jump in a Jeep and drive across the desert or up a mountain or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So wrapping things up here today, for your marketers out there, what can you kind of take away from the Jeep brand? What can you learn about marketing and branding from what they've done?
Well, here's a new soundbite that I think I've never touched on with other brands, because I wanted to give something new and exciting and unique, but something that's really at the core of all branding: trust. And I know we haven't said that word trust today on the podcast yet, but it is what all brands are really trying to build with customers: trust. If you look at Jeep and the long history it has building strong quality vehicles that stand up to the elements and, more importantly, to time itself, then you see how it has built a great deal of trust with people. That's what Jeep owners love about it. And it's insanely important today when many brands fight to remain relevant with products that don't necessarily hold up over time. Believe it or not, that affects your brand perception. People talk, and if it's not affecting your bottom line today, it will affect your bottom line tomorrow. Because when people decide to buy again, they'll remember that experience. And even if it's not their experience, then it's the experience of others who have had either a positive or negative one. So if you can learn one thing from Jeep, it's you're striving to build trust in everything that you do. And this will help your brand grow and thrive.
I think we said it earlier, but it deserves repeating. There's no better marketing than word of mouth. Nothing is better than you coming to me and saying, I love this brand for all these reasons, is far more powerful than seeing a website, reading a brochure, seeing a social media post, anything like that. Nothing beats it, right?
If someone has a great experience and they tell somebody else, guess what? That person's probably going to trust you and buy that product if they're in, obviously, the market for it.
Yeah. So my takeaway, it's more about what Jeep has done in terms of connecting with their fan base, and I think one of the things that you see happen in marketing and branding, we see it a lot anyways, that companies get so carried away in what they want to be that they kind of overlook what they actually are. What do your customers actually love about you? What do they value from the brand? Why do they keep coming back? A lot of companies with their message will push, this is our key value, this is what we want. But is that really what your existing customers feel? What is it you value from us? What is it we do that you think is unique or better or different? And, reiterating and underlining those things rather than always just focusing on, we want you to view our company this way, or we want you to put these benefits that we give you above all else. It's important to find out the boots on the ground are actually doing, what they're actually thinking, and how they perceive your brand. And when you do that, a lot of the times you can grab onto that and use that to reach more people.
I like that. If you have a product and it's round and blue, and you say the most important thing is that it's round, and everybody else that buys your product says it's blue, that's the most important aspect or feature, you have to listen to them. You wouldn't then just go ahead and make your product green. When you see what people really value about your product or your company, look at that and say, oh, how can we actually expand on that? How can we enhance that for the customer?
Yeah, and that's a great simplified example. If people value the blueness and you're like, buy our product today, it's round. Yeah. You're not going to gain those new customers, but maybe if you focus on the blueness, you play into that, tap into that, use that energy, turn it around to expand your brand a little bit. So it's a good example. I like when we, we give like these little speeches and then we praise each other for how much we like them.
I was actually going to say, I was surprised you didn't come into the podcast and be like, Jeeps suck. I hate Jeeps. Why are we even talking about this? Then like get me riled up, be like, what are you talking about, man? How could you?
I should have. We know people love listening to people argue. That's what like sports radio is all about. Just two people being like, it's terrible. No, it's good.
Why would you say that? Yeah, good stuff. But all good takeaways, I think. And what do you think? Anything else you have for our Jeep listeners today?
Do you want to, praise Jeep a little more in hopes that maybe they'll send one, as a gift to your house?
Oh.
Like a golden Jeep or one with like the Speaking Human logo on it?
That would be great. I'd like that. I don't know if I'd really be all excited about a golden Jeep. Might weigh too much.
That's true. You go off-road and like just sink into the ground?
That, and it would cost $100,000 a year to put gas in it. It's so heavy. Yeah.
Yeah, so he doesn't want the gold Jeep. You heard him, he turned it down. Just give us a call, Jeep. We'll hand you the design. It'll be super easy. All you got to do is provide the free Jeep.
Free Jeeps.
Yeah, hashtag free Jeeps.
All right, well, that's it for today's episode. You can find current and past episodes of the podcast at speakinghuman.com. You can also subscribe, rate, and review the Speaking Human podcast in the iTunes store.
Email us with your thoughts on the Jeep brand. Are you a Jeep lover, a Jeep hater, or something in between? Or any questions or comments? Feedback at thinkmonsters.com. That's feedback at thinkmonsters.com. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Speaking Human. Catch you then, humans. Hashtag my Jeep story.
Speaking Human.